we go. Sean, thank you for being here. Thank you for coming down on the show today. Like I just said, I really don't like doing introductions at all. So one thing I always hated was that in interviews was the first question you always get was, "Hey, tell us about yourself." So I got to throw that on you, even though I hate it. At least give everyone a little bit of a snapshot of who you are and your background, and then we just kind of go from there.
Mm. Yeah. So right now, what I got going on is I teach yoga, I teach meditation. I have 4 kids, live in Pittsburgh, and I am I guess you could say, former NFL kicker turned mindfulness teacher. I had a lot of injuries playing football, and also not just physical, but some mental struggles, and that's what got me into yoga. And I enjoyed it so much, and it helped me so much that's what I love to do now, to give back, and hopefully it helps some other people.
So, all right, let's go back a little bit here. So, you're a football. You obviously just said you're an NFL kicker,
Right.
right? So, and you had some injuries and stuff, and then afterwards you got into yoga, or was it before then, or?
Yeah, it was after. So I played in the NFL in the early '90s. So yoga really wasn't on the scene yet. Well, it was on the scene, but it was on like, it was considered crunchy granola, really out there. And the NFL at the time, the way you trained was hardcore. There was nothing like for your mind. There was nothing that was really restorative. My wife, actually, she was a yoga pioneer, you could say, because she was already into yoga when I was in the NFL in the early '90s. And she kept saying like, "Hey, you need to do yoga for your back." But I just didn't listen to her, because it just seemed so foreign for me, because that's, all the trainers that I work with in college and the NFL, like that's not what you did. You kept pushing, you did stuff that was, that was hard, and nothing that was really balanced. So yeah, I got into yoga and meditation actually when I felt like I had nothing to lose. My career ended prematurely from overuse of my body, just training too hard. And I tried all these different ways to heal my back, but nothing worked other than yoga was like my last gasp. And then I healed my back from that.
So, all right. So overuse. When did you start playing football? I mean, Pee Wee. I would think.
Yeah. So I started kicking when I was 8 years old. I got into like punt, pass, and kick competitions. I played multiple sports. But I kicked a lot. I didn't kick that much like in middle school, and not even really that much in high school. Where it caught up to me was around my junior year in college, when I knew I just had a couple more years to shine, in front of like NFL scouts, because this was it. And that's when I really started to kick my training into overdrive, where I would sometimes like go to the field with like a notebook, and I would have it already like pre-filled out, like how many kicks I would kick that day, like 100, like 20 from this spot, 20 from here. And I would just keep kicking, no matter how my leg felt or how my back felt, because I was very, like hyper focused. I was diagnosed with ADD when I was young, so that was part of it. So there was a lot of good, that I was able to channel with ADD, where I could really drive, but sometimes it was too much if I wasn't aware of what I was doing.
So, being diagnosed with ADD at that young age, I mean, did they prescribe you Ritalin or back then? I mean.
Yeah, it was Ritalin then, so it wasn't ADHD then as well. It was ADD, and how it was diagnosed back then too. It was kind of embarrassing, because like you would have to I had to go to the office in my school. The principal would have to watch me take the pill, and then after that, then they let me like take the pill like in the lunchroom. But then the kids would make fun of me. Why do you take that? You got problems, and so there was a lot of like, I guess you could say like stigma to the whole like ADD, because this was, I was diagnosed in the early '80s when it was just starting to take off. It wasn't like, more awareness about it now. So it was a little like a new disease, you could say at the time, or new diagnosis.
It's interesting, man. Because I read articles and hear things about how it's almost overly diagnosed nowadays, and and I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, I've always thought I had a sense of it, but I've never been fully diagnosed with it, just because I can tell with myself that if it doesn't keep my attention for more than 5-10 minutes, I'm already moving on to something else, or even while I'm doing something that I'm thinking about 10 different things. I mean, was that kind of about what you were dealing with? And
Yeah. I mean, I think when I was diagnosed with it, this was like, I remember being in the doctor's office with my mom, the doctor, and he basically just told my mom, like, well, this is how we can, like your son has a problem. If he takes these pills, and then he won't have a problem. He'll be fixed. And, this is just working with the mentality, just like the pill would fix me. There was no, nothing that I could do non-pharmaceutical. Like that seemed to be like, that was like the only way. Luckily for me, and I didn't really realize this until like later on in life, I realized that like playing sports is actually where I could really manage my ADD, when I could like burn off energy. Because for me, like being in a classroom just couldn't work. I was like all over the place. I couldn't sit still, but like sports was how I could like, I don't know, I guess you could say like just like rinse all that busy mind stuff. And so for, the kicking is really what helped me, get through all that.
so, when I was little, me and my friends would get together on the playground. It was always kind of cool. Like, we'd punt the ball, or we'd try to do field goal kicks, and I was never good at it by any means. But just try to kick the ball as high as we could and as far as we could. I mean, that was always fun to me. But we never had soccer either growing up. I mean, but it was just, we never learned any mechanics or anything, but it was just fun. I mean, so obviously with you going to the NFL, I mean, it was just you just dialing in mechanics and us getting the fundamentals down, correct? I mean, just training and training and training, like you said, and almost overtraining.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for me, I what really helped my kicking is I also played soccer. So
Oh, okay.
I started playing soccer like age 7, and when I was in high school, I decided to actually not play football. And the reason why is because I also like other sports. I also like soccer and basketball. But at this time, the NFL was starting to get all these kickers were coming, like they're like European soccer players becoming kickers. So kickers who also like never played like on a high school team. Morten Andersen, who was like my idol at the time. He was like from I believe Denmark, and he was kicking. I remember seeing him on TV. I'm thinking, well, hey, if he can do it, just come from soccer, then I can do it. So that was my game plan. I would just kick footballs, at nights, weekends at this field down the street from my house, and I would just keep doing that. And then eventually I'd walk on to college, and that was my game plan.
Wait, so you walked on? You played it for a university, right?
Yeah, I played for 3 different colleges because I went such an unusual route that the first college that I walked onto at the first day of practice, they actually told me to leave because I got there and I'm like, I'm here to play. It was Division III, so anyone can like just show up and
Sure.
play, and like you put on some pads and stuff, and the coach says, hey, you know what, I changed my mind and we don't need you. So this was like maybe the second or third day of school. So I transferred out of there as quickly as I could. And then I didn't know what to do, but I got really lucky. There was a school in my hometown, again, university, and they're putting together their first college football team since World War II, I think, like since 1945. And so they just wanted anybody. So this was like perfect for me. I just showed up in the coach's office, told me I want to play football. He said, sure. We just, if you can put on some cleats, you're on the team. So that was my big break. But I was kind of like I guess like the Happy Gilmore of kickers. I because I had no training, from or no coaching, I could kick the ball really far. Like I had no problem like kicking into the end zone on kickoffs, or I could kick like a 60, 65-yard field goal distance wise, but I couldn't kick it straight. So I was there for 2 years, and I believe I was maybe 4 for 14, something like that. I was like one of the lowest rated kickers in the country. But then after that, I transferred to Pitt, and worked out for me that I worked my way up from like 5th in the depth chart, and I ended up having a really good season there.
I feel that being a kicker, and almost at any level though, is almost a very underrated position. Hopefully that's what I'm trying to say. Is just because when coaches try to ice the kicker, when you get that pressure on you to, hey, you got to kick the game-winning field goal. I mean, I don't know if you're still keeping up with football. What, didn't the Bengals just win their last 2 games by field goals? I mean,
Yeah,
so
the last round of the playoffs, they're all last second field goals to like take it in overtime. Yeah, it was
yeah.
unbelievable.
Did you have any situations like that? And just what's the mindset like?
Yeah, like that. Like there's a saying for kickers that it's like that it's 90% mental, and the other 10% is also mental.
Okay.
Especially when you get to that level of like, like Division I football, or the NFL, like, you obviously have like the physical tools because you've been through all the tryouts and everything. You can kick the ball in the end zone on your kickoffs. You can make a high percentage of field goals. It's just the mentality. And then the biggest challenge is the bounce back. Like, any kicker, if, they made 4 or 5 in a row, they can feel really good about themselves, but it's the kickers who miss a kick, who are now worried about missing that second kick. Can they bounce back and keep their head on straight to stay in it? And that's usually the biggest downfall for kickers who don't last very long in the NFL is they struggle coming back. And it's certainly not easy at that level, but that's what can do in a kicker.
Well, I mean, is it also true that, that if an NFL, even a college kicker, I think that ESPN's reported a few times that even if they miss not a decent kick, but if they miss a game-winning kick or whatever, they've received death threats from.
Oh, absolutely. Oh yeah. I see that a lot. Like, I mean, I still like follow kickers. I root for like every kicker because I don't want to see that. But yeah, I've seen multiple times. Happens a lot in college. Yeah, like you said, and like their Twitter will blow up and it'll be death threats. And then some of these kickers who, have the potential to go into the NFL, a lot of them have a hard time ever recovering from that.
Yeah. We'll jump over to the yoga and stuff a little bit later, but I'm so kind of curious just because I think you're one of the first professional athletes I've ever really talked to. But, I mean, what was your goal? Was your goal always to go, hey, I want to be an NFL kicker? Or was it just, hey, I'll just see how far this takes me? Or
yeah, it was the first one. I from a very young age, my father was a really good athlete. He was like all state baseball, basketball, track. And so our house, like sports was like on all the time. Saturdays was college football. Sunday was the NFL. So always talking football with my dad. So I wanted to be an athlete just like him. And so like at a very young age, my dream was always to be in the NFL. So I think that's why when, I had the setback of like, the first college team, saying no, struggling at the second place, I was so determined to make it. That was always, I always thought, man, if I make it in the NFL, like then I've made it in life, and that's it. So like, that's another reason why I drove myself so hard and eventually like overtrained my body, because I was just so determined on it. I never really like thought to like, think about this like long-term. So, so it was something I always thought I could be. And that's what made the struggle really hard for me. And for a lot of like athletes as well. It's like when my career ended, it wasn't on my own terms. It was due to an injury. So I had a hard time like shifting to what's next.
What was the injury, if you don't mind me asking that?
Yeah. So what happened was my hip flexor on my kicking leg, my right leg, it degenerated. It was my third NFL stop. I was with the New York Jets, and we were having a practice. And at the time, the kickoff was at the 30-yard line, and you're expected to kick it to the goal line or deeper. And my kickoffs were landing around the 5, around the 8, around the 3. They weren't going in the end zone because my leg strength was just starting to dissipate. This was happening for a while. So I thought, if I just continue like this, they're going to cut me because I'm not kicking at NFL level. So I thought I have nothing to lose. I'm going to go see the trainer. And then I went and saw the team physician with the Jets, and he started poking around at my right hip flexor. And he was like down there for like a couple minutes and like going, like, so I knew something was up. And he says, your right hip flexor is like gone. Like it's degenerated. And so like what happened was it was just, overuse, that muscle there just had nothing left. He says it was just like a little, the muscle, there wasn't much left to it. So he's like, there's nothing you could do. It's not going to grow back. Like you've destroyed it.
Is that a common injury among kickers?
Only common amongst ones who train really hard, nowadays, because there's like more advances in training, and like a lot of colleges have like, they're bringing yoga teachers. They have, they don't push them as hard in the off season like they used to. They're open to bring in like more stretching and more restorative. And so like it's not as common. There's still overuse injuries, but we're actually a lot of the overuse injuries now in sports are at a young age, because now you have kids specializing in sports. Like you have kids who are having shoulder issues, like baseball players, like at age 13, overuse. So there's a lot more overuse at an early age, and they don't even get to like college level. Some of these kids.
That's what I kind of wanted to ask you is that. So what years were you? So I mean, we can take it back from your college. Mm-hmm. So what years were you like at Pitt, and then what years did you play at NFL through?
Yeah. So all in the early 90s. So yeah, so like
Really?
late 80s, early 90s at Pitt, and then early 90s, mid 90s, the NFL.
So I was going to ask that, do you think that if you were to be playing in today's era, I mean, would that help you lengthen your career? I mean, we're seeing athletes like LeBron James, like
Right.
36 or whatever else he's at, playing at that top of his game still. I mean,
Right.
Athletes are still just progressing with sports science and like what you
Right. Absolutely.
You think you'd still be?
Yeah. There's so it's changed so much now. There's, there's changes even like nutrition, like that's like big one. Like when I was playing, it was like, oh, bulk up, like take all these calories. And like, this weird way of thinking. We, in our weight room at Pitt, we had this big protein shake machine. I remember taking all these protein shakes, but it was also filled with like all this sugar and stuff like that. So like all that is gone now. So yeah, I mean, these teams now have like trainers and for the food and everything. So there's so many more opportunities to get some better guidance now versus just, you're on your own.
So, yeah, I mean, it just amazes me that people are like now just, like I said earlier, just playing for X amount of years now, way longer than you would ever see. But it just like we just said, everything keeps evolving. And you said it earlier that, back in the 90s and nobody wanted to do yoga or hot yoga or anything or take
right.
I've read about players drinking beer in the locker room during halftime or even after games and stuff,
right,
smoking cigarettes. I mean, nobody cares about nutrition and taking care of themselves. So
right. Yeah. Well, and then Tom Brady. So when my career ended in like the mid 90s, he got into the league just a couple years after me. But as soon as he got into the league up in Boston, he started doing yoga. And then, he also had that, those trainers that were with him around. I remember the incident where he had him on the sidelines, the team, like they said, he was a distraction. So he had like a personal, I forget what he was, an herbalist or something with him, but like people like there's athletes like Tom Brady now and LeBron James does meditation. So like they have so much more that they can use now that I think that really helps contribute to the longevity of their careers.
So, I mean, what's it like playing in the NFL? I mean, is it everything that you thought it would be growing up or is it just, like what you just said earlier, constant pressure, like, oh, if I don't make this kick this far, I'm going to get cut or, I mean, is it just, is it just stressed out your mind or is it actually what people see what on the outside, the money, living it up?
Yeah.
Traveling.
Yeah. It's a little bit of all of that, my perspective was, if you look at it, the NFL players, I was like probably the 80%, like the guys who just like come and go. I was like a journeyman. So, when I got to the Detroit Lions, like one of the first things that hit me, just having conversations with the players and so forth, I used to think like watching the NFL that all the players were like so happy, like they made it. This is like their dream come true. But at the NFL level, these players have been like, banging their bodies for so many years that, you'd be like, if I got a ride home from like one of the veterans from practice, I remember some of the conversations being like, the most important thing to them is like their health and family. Like they just wanted to like still be in one piece. And the players wanted to win, but one thing that really hit me is like most players, like if you were to like have them take like some truth serum, they would say that far more important to them is being healthy at the end of the season versus like winning the Super Bowl. I mean, sure, it's a lot of fun and there's a lot of glory in that, but like, most of these players, like they spend like before practice, like you'd have to get there a few hours before, like in the training room looked like a MASH unit, with all the players in it. And so they spent like more time like in the training room in many cases than they did on the practice field.
I got this theory. Well, I don't know. I've kind of borrowed it from different people too. So I don't know if I can fully say it's mine, but just with different conversations I've had. But do you think with, just like you said, you're banging your body there and you're taking hits and with CTE protocol that in the future of the NFL, we might see a shift that more players or not even players, but athletes or younger generations go more towards soccer? Or, I mean, I know CTE can be in soccer too, but it just seems more not as relevant, obviously, as the NFL. I mean,
right. Yeah, I think it's already happening. I've seen somewhere where they say, like the youth participation in football has been steadily declining.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of professional football players out there who've been outspoken about saying, like, you probably don't need to play tackle football until you're like high school age at the minimum. Which I think is true. I mean, football is a sport where, for example, Curtis Martin, who's a NFL Hall of Fame running back, played for the Jets. I played with him at Pitt. He didn't play high school football till he was a junior. And one of the reasons why he played is because like his gym coach told him, hey, you should play football. So this kid played, he was a kid at the time. He played 2 years of high school football, played 3 at the University of Pittsburgh, and he's now like in the NFL Hall of Fame. So the way the sport works, like you really just don't need to, doing all that tackling, all that hitting at that age. There's a lot of ways where kids can still work on football technique and, probably not have to be hitting from like age 8, all the way until when they start in high school. That could save 6 years. And now the hitting is not as hard, so I don't know how much it really saves, but, I think it wouldn't hurt. And I think, they seem to be slowly like giving the players more non-contact practices in the NFL, but the NFL still is looking to make, as much money as they can. They just added a 17th game. There's 17 games in NFL this year. So these teams that are playing the Super Bowl, what is that? 20 games plus preseason.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I mean, did you ever I know you being a kicker, but did you ever have to take any shots or get hit like that or, or anything?
I got what they call ear hold a couple times, because you can't, your peripheral vision is not great. Like on a kickoff, because I'm the safety, I'd be like the last guy down, but I couldn't see it. A couple times I got ear hold where I like flew into like the other team's bench. But actually it happened when I was at Division III Gannon, so it wasn't on TV. Luckily, I think right nowadays it'd be all over Twitter.
Oh no, Twitter and everything, and then plus probably ESPN and everyone else.
Oh yeah.
Go like 14 different people would have to analyze it and break it to a T.
Right.
You see it on a bunch of that's one thing I get tired of sports now. It's just like you see a play or you see a game or whatever, and then it's just like, okay, we've read about it for an hour. Let's send it now, but everyone's breaking it down to the smallest.
Right.
It's like, all right, we got it. We figured it out. Yeah, let's move on. Anyway, but all right. So your last day in the NFL, is this when, I know you're an author, you wrote your book and you moved more into the yoga and you became a yoga teacher. I mean, was that when the shift started to happen, like your last day in the NFL, or was it before? Or
yeah, so I teaching yoga and meditation came much later. When my career ended, I spent a few years like not accepting what happened. Like I said earlier, like I didn't go out on my own terms. I felt like I could still play because like my mind was still there. It was just the one injury. So I spent a couple of years just like being really upset, like at my body, regretting like my training and so forth. So I didn't know what to do next. And so I just tried to find ways to, I guess like replace this competitive vibe, because I thought that nothing could fill up my life like football did. Yeah. So I just kind of bounced around. I did some sales jobs and, when I get these sales jobs, I wanted to be like the best salesman. So I was trying to like get really competitive with that, but I was finding that it really wasn't, like fulfilling to me, so to speak. And then I just started to think more and more about like how much like the yoga helped me physically, how it helped me mentally, emotionally. And so my wife was teaching yoga and she opened up a studio and one of the teachers moved out of town and she said, hey, I need you to teach because I don't have any other teachers. And so I started teaching and I've been doing that ever since. And eventually I quit my full-time job, which at the time was pharmaceutical sales and biotech sales.
I mean, what's your mindset though? That, is it, you can't go out at your own terms and you're told, you're saying, hey, you can't play anymore. I mean, is that just, you said, I know you were down, but does it just, you were in decline? Like for me, it would just be like, okay, shit. Like, should I go try to find, like you played for what, 3 different teams? Is that what you said?
Yeah. 3. And then I also played like the World Football League. Yeah. So 4.
Like,
yeah.
I got to stay at it. But is it just like, man, you tried, did everything. Like, I'm going to move on, just.
Yeah, I wish it was the latter, but I was still like, I just wouldn't give up. And and I've talked to other athletes about this who have gone through the same like cycle, like first it's like denial, but the biggest thing is like, it was like my identity. And for so long, for many years, I was like a football player. And then when I was signed by the Detroit Lions, my rookie year, I'm like, okay, now this is who I am. I'm an NFL football player. And so at that point there, I just couldn't picture myself like not being in the game. And even though I'd see guys come and go all the time in the NFL, like, on the first day of practice, remember one guy told me like, NFL stands for not for long. And he was right, because like, I think it was like a week into training camp. Like I remember come back from practice, and the one guy next to me, his locker was all cleared out. He was cut, but you never think it's going to be you in some ways. So I always picture myself having this really lengthy career and playing the Super Bowl, just like a lot of players think. So like when the doctor told me I couldn't kick anymore, is like, that was like my identity. I just didn't know who else I could be, because I always equated myself like with being successful in life with being an NFL player. So once that was not the case, it took me a few years to really accept that.
I mean, what's it like? Does the GM come down and say, hey man, we don't need your services anymore? Or is it like you walk in the locker room and your locker's cleared out? You're like, oh, okay, I guess
yeah. So typically they make you clear it out yourself, because you have pitchers in there and all that stuff. But there's a guy on every team called the Turk, and what he usually is a guy that's like maybe like a new coach, maybe he's like an assistant, because nobody wants this job, because his job is when this player's cut, he has to go to his hotel room or his dorm room. He has to knock on the door, and it's all the teams. It's usually the same. They say, hey, so-and-so, coach needs to see you down in his office. Bring your playbook. That's all they say. It's just, that's the phrase. It's maybe played with a little bit, but usually that's all it is. There was, when I was with the Colts, there was this guy who hid underneath his bed, and they tried to cut him. Took him like 2 days to cut. I've heard of guys like hiding in the bathroom. So guys would know, or like you just pretend you're sleeping, but that's what happened. He'd knock on the door, the Turk, and then that was it. Then you go down and you meet the coach, depending on the coach, some of them, you get down there and the head coach wasn't even there, and there would be somebody down there, and you'd have to sign your paperwork about you release all the stuff for the team. And, the only head coach that actually met me when I left was with the Colts, and he gave me like a half an hour, which is really unusual. Most of the coaches, they don't, you're just another guy gone. So
that's part of the business, right? I mean,
absolutely. Yeah.
Just like you just said, you never know. Like you're always told that you're not going to play. You just don't know when, right? Or when it's going to stop.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, you just said like hiding in the locker rooms and stuff. It sparked another thought in my head. Did you ever have any superstitions? I mean, might be a little off of a tangent, but did you ever have any superstitions when playing? I know like Michael Jordan would wear his college shorts under his Chicago Bulls uniform when he would play. I mean, did you ever do anything like that? Have to wear like a certain shoe or?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I had a shirt that I always wore, like my pit shirt, when I was in NFL, I always wore it. And eventually like the armpits were like yellow stain from sweat, and they had holes, but I didn't care, because if I didn't wear that shirt, I have a bad day. But, I also had for kickers, I wore a size, I wear size 12, like regular shoes. So I wore a size 12 on my plant shoe, but my kicking shoe was sometimes a 9.5 or a 10. So that's what a lot of kickers do. I wasn't alone in that, but because you want it to be like skin tight, so that there's no space between, the leather and your foot. So it's almost, there used to be barefoot kickers because they had such like a pure foot hitting the ball, but that's crazy, to do. But having a very small shoe gives you about as close to being barefoot as you can, also having a shoe. I would also file down my cleats so they wouldn't catch the grass. So
that's interesting. I never heard that.
Yeah, I mean, my foot was in pain all game, but you just got used to it. And now when I go get sized up for shoes, I'm actually like a 12 in my left, and my right is like an 11.5. I think I might have shrunk my foot a little bit from being
really
squeezed all that time. I think just a little bit.
So, all right. So All right. So you said, when did you start yoga? I mean, was this, I know you said they may have had that later or maybe early in your early days, or was this like afterwards you said, hey, I want to start doing the yoga thing?
Yeah. I started once my career ended, because my hip was in such bad shape, but my hip affected my back, and I had a hard time, like even walking. What happened to me a lot, like near the end of my career, is like I would wake up in the morning, I couldn't get out of bed. My whole back would like lock up, and I would have to like crawl off the bed, just roll off the bed, and I'd have to crawl my hands and knees to get to the bathroom. And this went on and off for a few years. So that was at the point where I decided, hey, I have to try yoga. And my wife was teaching all the time, and then I started to practice with her, and probably within about 4 or 5 months, I felt like 100% again. I came up with this crazy idea to make an NFL comeback. But like once you're out of the league for a couple of years, they're done with you anyways. But I probably physically could have played at that point.
I mean, you're talking about all the pains, and I forgot which, I think it was one of the 30 for 30s I was watching one time, and it was like, I forgot who was saying it, but anyway, they were saying they couldn't even get out of the bed in the morning without popping like 8 Advil or something.
Yeah.
I mean, just like you were in that type of pain. I mean,
oh yeah. So there was, I would typically have to, for the last couple of years of my career, I would have to take, muscle relaxants because my back would get so locked up, that I always worried, like during the game, I'd have like back spasms. So I needed to be relaxed. And that was always really hard because like when I would play with all those muscle relaxants in my body, I'd be sleepy. So sometimes during the game, I would be like, fighting that. I also took like 800 milligram Advil and some other painkillers just to get through it. But, while it was all happening, I never thought twice about it because, that's how it went. Like you go in the training room with all the other players and you get all this treatment and you take pills or whatever, and you just played through the pain. Mine was different because like a lot of the players, their injuries were from being hit. Mine was from just overtraining. That's something that if I would have caught earlier, been more aware of, I probably could have alleviated.
So, you went like your first yoga class and you kept doing it and you finally started seeing the results, like, oh, my body's feeling better. And that's when you started to get certified in it. And that's just what kept it going, kept the party going.
Yeah. I just became really sold on it. And, there wasn't like many yoga trainings at the time. So actually my first training was my wife. She just trained me in our living room. Then she opened a studio. She was actually the first yoga studio in all of Pittsburgh. So it was just like yoga was like really brand new at the time. So, so I just taught it and I loved it because I figured if it fixed my back, it's got to work for people. But also I think because I was so resistant to yoga too, that I thought it was really good for me to be teaching, because if I was teaching yoga, maybe I would also get some more people who would show up, be resistant, and kind of just feed off that energy.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a couple of yoga classes. I work at a local university here, and I used to work in a rec center, and I would go in there and just participate in the yoga sessions. And it's very relaxing. It's just like I could feel myself like, ooh, just my body feels better after doing a couple of the stretches and stuff. And I don't know if I told you earlier, but I train CrossFit about 6 days a week and coach and try to compete too. And it's just like, oh, okay, there is something to this. I haven't tried hot yoga yet, but I hear that's a different level. But it's something I kind of want to try though. I mean, do you do any of the hot yoga stuff, or is it just?
Yeah, we actually do. We do hot power yoga. So it's a very physical style. I mean, there's all different types of yoga. There's ones where you just, lie down, restorative, which is great too. But my wife and I, she was a dancer. So we both had like athletic backgrounds. So that's why we got into the power yoga, the hot yoga, just because for us, we found, it just really would help us because we're pretty busy and, with our backgrounds like that, we needed a yoga that would just, that would really challenge us and then help us relax that way. Like for us, like our entry into yoga, just lying down, we wouldn't buy into that. We'd be too impatient, probably that probably is a better style for us to do, but like just for us being active, it made more sense. So yeah. And then what's nice about the heat too is, it has like a restorative quality to it. You don't have to work as hard, and because it also helps like relax the muscles. So for me, like therapeutically, I think that also really helped.
Coaching CrossFit as much. Well, I mean, I coach a few classes this week, but I always get, from people who haven't tried it, that it's like, oh, I can never do that. Or, maybe I should get in shape before I do CrossFit. I mean,
Right.
yeah, I mean, what is your advice for people? I mean, do you ever get that for yoga people? I mean, do they ever say,
Yeah,
no, I can't do this type of poses or stretches?
exactly. Right.
I
Oh
mean,
yeah, 100%. Yeah. The biggest excuse is like, I'm not flexible, so I'm not going to do yoga. But if you do
yeah,
yoga, it'll help you get flexible. Or, I'm not going to do yoga because I'm not good at it. But well, if you do yoga, it's really not about being good at it, but like you'll get the hang of it. So there's a lot of excuses for it. Yeah, I think it's the same thing. And what I always say to people who are new to yoga is, like anything, like give it, like take 5 or 10 classes at least,
yeah.
before giving up. Because like the first class is, I remember like the first time I went golfing, I shot like 160 at like a 9-hole golf course because I had no idea what I was doing. And why would I remember being frustrated, but like, why, I don't know why I was frustrated. I'd never done it before, but that happens in yoga too. Like people get really frustrated because they don't know the poses, but you're not supposed to know the poses right away, but eventually you will. And then it's not as difficult and overwhelming.
Well, it's probably, I mean, who you're learning yoga to from. I mean, if you have a good teacher and stuff,
Exactly.
they'll kind of throw you to the wolves and say, yeah, go in here and do crow pose.
Right. Right.
Yeah, right.
Right. Right.
Poses I can remember off the top of my head, but yeah, I mean, then that kind of, accustomate somebody to, okay, just little by little,
Right. Right.
better and better at it, right? So
Right. No. The teacher is key, because if the environment is, is right, and, you don't feel like you're, doing it wrong, then yeah, that makes a huge difference.
So I feel like I already know the answer to this question, but I mean, through your life experience, through your NFL career, your college career, through the yoga, is that what inspired you to get the book, flowing, get the book going?
Yeah, for sure. So what was happening was I just thought I would start to write about, yoga and meditation, and, my football career. But what happened was when I started writing it, the editor said, hey, why don't you just focus more on the NFL, because, and your story there, because that makes a lot more sense in terms of like, what people can relate to, versus like, this is how you do yoga, this is how you do meditation. So that's what eventually the book, ended up being, is just my story, my ups and downs. I talk a lot about, growing up with ADD and managing that. So the hope of the book was just, anyone who reads it can find some part of the story that they can relate to. And I also, wrote a lot about, just the end of my career too, because that I felt as if like, hopefully a lot of people can relate to all of a sudden thinking you have life worked out and this is how it's going to go. And this is when I'm going to be happy, when this goes. And all of a sudden that's not how it goes, but there's still life beyond that. And how I came up with the title of, called The Point After, how one resilient kicker learned there's more to life in the NFL. When I was in the NFL with the Detroit Lions, I was playing with Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
And we were playing the Dallas Cowboys in London for an exhibition game. And I was a rookie doing what rookies do. And I came back from the hotel around 3:00. I was out in some pubs with some other rookies, and I came stumbling into the lobby. There's Barry Sanders, and he's just sitting there reading like a Stephen King novel or something like that. And I sat down next to him because him and I somehow became friendly during training camp. He asked me, it was like second or third day of training camp, he asked me to play catch. And so that was like our tradition. Every day before practice, we would play catch. You had to warm up. So we had like a talking relationship, and I was speaking to him about, hey, in a few weeks was like the first cut down. Like, NFL rosters, they go from 80 to 60 and they keep going down. And I told him I was worried about that. And he said, hey, one thing you need to remember while you're playing the NFL is that there's more to life than the NFL. And I remember when he told me this, I actually didn't believe him, because I thought, well, there's no more. This is it. Like, this is what life's all about, being NFL. But of course he was right. It took me about 5 years to believe that. But he was a rare player he was maybe 26, 27, who had already, and he would end up retiring early in the NFL. I think he already had some balance, so he must've got some mentor along the way, or just himself. He realized this, but that was rare, because most players never really looked at the way he did. Most players were, like me, were like, this is it. This is everything.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like what you just said. Like he had that balance. Like who was it else? Like Calvin Johnson. I think he retired early. Barry,
Mhm.
you just said Barry Sanders.
Yeah, it's rare when it happens when someone retires early. Like, whoa, like he retired. It just doesn't happen very much.
I mean, that's a really badass memory though, just to say, hey, I used to play catch with Barry, arguably one of the best running backs ever played the game.
Yeah, I mean, he was
Yeah.
just an interesting guy because he, I mean, to hang out with like a rookie kicker during training camp is weird, but he just was, someone who just, he just didn't get distracted easy. He had like a focus, and he just seemed to always like have it all figured out, and just really steady guy.
I mean, do you not really? I guess you don't. How do I want to word this? That based on the outside looking in, I mean, like I was talking about those 30 for 30s that, or I think there was a broke one, and that most athletes they don't have that type of mindset, or they don't have it balanced out, or they're not looking after NFL. They're just looking at the right now picture. And that's why you see
Yeah.
so many dreaded stories of them going down, for lack for a better word, the shithole, just
Right.
ruining their lives. I mean, but it's a different type of person and a player just to have that, to sit back and think about, oh, there is more to life than just playing football, or there's more to life that's going to be after this. I mean,
Right. Right. Yeah. And a lot of these players, they just don't get that much support. They apparently, it's getting a little bit better where NFL teams are bringing in financial advisors and so on and so forth, but there's still, most of these guys, like once it's over, like that's it. So there's not much preparation, and colleges, from what I understand now, are trying to, they're probably doing a lot more from what I understand in the NFL, but I think that's the disconnect, where there's just not enough support for these players who who need that support. And now what's starting to happen as well is beyond the life after football support, but is also the mental health support. You couldn't talk about mental health in the NFL 5 years ago because that was considered weak. When I remember when I was struggling with my injury when I was with the Colts, and I wanted to take a day off practice. And the only way I could do that, I would have to go tell my position coach, the special teams coach, I'd have to ask him if I could take the day off. And I was scared, because you just don't do that, especially like if I was like, this is my second year in the NFL. So I was still trying to prove myself. And so like 4 or 5 days I was hurting. Do I say something? Do I not? Because if I say something, he's going to call me a wimp. But if I don't say anything, I'm going to struggle and my performance is down. So it got to the point where I felt like I had nothing to lose because I was starting to struggle in practice. So I went and I told him, and he told me to suck it up.
yeah.
He's like, suck it up, like what kind of mentality is that? And so that's how a lot of coaches, thought back then, and some of them still think today. And so that's the struggle for these players. That's why they keep pushing and pushing, because if they show some weakness, then depending on the coach, they may or may not, respect the player's decision about being honest about their physical or their mental challenges.
I mean, do you think that's just because of how older, not, older
Yep.
coaches were brought up, and then,
Yep.
and that's how they were trained. That's the values they went
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
just what you said, if you said anything about mental health or anything, you're a sissy, you're a wimp, get off the
Right.
field or whatever, go home and cry to mama, but like maybe like we were talking about shifts. I mean, do you see a new trend or shifts maybe with younger coaches coming in? And like you said, teams are bringing in more
Right.
psychologists and stuff like that too. Right. And just,
Yeah. Yeah. There's a shift. Is it where like it needs to be, but it doesn't seem like it, but it's definitely moving that direction. And yeah, probably when I played, it was a lot more like old school thinking, but there's still a lot of coaches today who still, but buy into that. But I think, it's definitely moving in the right direction, but just probably not just as fast as it could be.
I mean, I don't know how, I mean, I'm sure you're still keeping up with the NFL, but like the whole Antonio Brown thing, when he just went haywire right there in that half.
Right.
Do you think he's got some issues going on like that? I mean, as far as mental health and just, or is he just, is it prima donna? I mean,
yeah, it's hard to say, and, you always wonder too about like players with CTE, because you never know till later. And so, it's just hard to say, but does he have anywhere to go, and to talk to someone about that, probably not. So I don't know what the story is with him, but I just know a lot of players like, it is starting to get better. Like, who is it in the NBA? Kevin Love is very outspoken about mental health in the NBA. So, but the NBA has always been ahead of the curve of the NFL. The NFL is always like the slowest to catch up on issues like that. But
why is that, you think? Is that just because they don't change their
I,
ways? Or?
I think it's ownership. The way the NFL ownership works, they are still operating with a it's all about the organization first, and the players are expendable still. I think the NBA is further ahead on all that.
I never really thought of it like that. I mean, I've never really sat down and even looked at it that point of view, but I mean, I guess you're right about that. I mean, it seems like the NBA seems to be always trying to do bigger things now, as far as, like they went over to China and they're trying to be more global. But I mean, NFL's done a couple games in London, but never really put it into terms like that. That NFL's just kind of being slow to changing their ways as far. But yeah, I guess if you got a working thing, just if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Maybe that's the mentality.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't really know where I was going with that point. But I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you earlier, and just something just sparked my mind right there. Just so with COVID and everything, that everyone seemed to take a step back and reset their brains and the batteries and go back to neutral. I mean, was traveling, as much as you did in the NFL, but do you think that took a toll on your body too? Just you're waking up. All right, we got to go to another city. I mean, the next week, and then practicing, and obviously. But I mean, do you think just the amount of traveling could have had a big part on you, traveling different time zones, messing with your sleep and stuff like that? I mean, what's that like?
Yeah. I love the traveling. That was probably one of the things I love the most, was just, going to new stadiums, new cities, new towns. I think, what I don't know if it was like a toll for me, but I know is for a lot of players or for kickers, especially is like, there's a saying for kickers, like you're only as good as like your last kick. So that's what was, I remember, like really challenging for me. Every time I kicked, whether it was for the NFL team or when I played for NFL Scotland or NFL Europe for Scotland, it was just like every kick, like I knew there's a possibility, like this could be the end of my career. Like if I miss this one, that could be it. So that didn't really take a toll on me, but I just remember when that was happening, I never really had a chance to really enjoy my time in the NFL, because I was always worried about, like, am I still going to have a job tomorrow? Yet at the same time thinking, oh, I'm going to have this really lengthy career. So I was always like in that battle.
What's it like playing overseas compared to over here?
That was a lot of fun. The reason being, it was the NFL Europe, which is apparently coming back, I heard. But anyways, it was just NFL. Well, actually, NFL players like myself who had just got cut. So like we had like 5 players from the Jets, 5 players from the Chiefs. They were either just recently cut or they're like on loaner, where they would go back to the Jets once they played over in Scotland. And so there were 6 teams at the time: Scotland, Amsterdam, I believe Frankfurt, Barcelona. What was nice about it is like you got to travel and you just got to play, because the guys who are playing just like love football, because if you're playing in this league, because the pay was so low, like you just wanted to play. So it was refreshing after a few years in the NFL to play in a league that reminded me a lot more like college, or I felt like I was just playing again for the love of the sport.
Yeah. Sean, I know I want to be respectful of your time here. I know we're getting a little short. So I've been asking this one question, some of the past episodes I've done, and I thought it was kind of fun. So while we've been on the subject of sports and yoga and everything, but it's kind of like a would you rather question. But if you could play for one fictional sports team, who would it be?
Oh, fictional sports team.
Yeah.
So like, so is it actually a team, but like,
yeah, I took it as just, hey, if it was any team,
so if I could play for any, gotcha. Oh,
just one of those made up, like you see in a movie or whatever. I mean,
oh, wow.
I've had a lot on it, and some of us, I should have said that.
It'd probably be for the Cleveland Browns. That was a team that I grew up rooting for, and I can't believe that they still have yet to make like the Super Bowl. So that was one thing that when I went to from college to NFL, I was no longer a Browns fan because now I just wanted a job. And so I lost my love for the Cleveland Browns, but like to play for them would be just like one time would be, yeah, I guess that would be it.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Huh. Did you ever get a chance? How far did you go? Did y'all ever get deep into the season? Did you ever get a playoff game or?
No. So I was with most of these teams. The longest I was with any team was 6 months, and that was with the Colts. So it was just no playoffs for me.
How do you are you still pulling for the Colts now, or who do you pull for now?
I root for the teams I played for, but like I'm not a diehard for anybody.
Really?
I am completely like unattached emotionally, which is great. So I just like we'll watch the games, and I'm more interested now, not so much in teams, but I'm interested like in the backstories of the players and just that part of the drama. Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge Pitt football fan, and so I go to all their games and
nice.
But for the NFL, I just watch and sit back and enjoy.
I mean, one more question. You said your kids, or you have 4 kids. I mean, are they showing any interest in kicking some footballs around? Or
yeah, actually, my oldest daughter was she was a punt, pass, and kick champion.
Nice.
Yeah. So she played college sports, and my youngest right now he plays baseball. So no football for him. So to be honest with you, I'm happy about it.
I would say that's probably a good way to go. So it might take you pretty far. But like I said, I want to be respectful of your time. If anybody wants to find the book, find any more about anything about you, I mean, how do they do that if you want to throw that out there right now?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, my website's SeanConley.net. My book's on there. There's some like if you're interested in yoga or want to like get interested into it, there's all kinds of stuff, free classes on there, free meditation as well. SeanConley.net.
Have you done any of the virtual like yoga stuff? Or
yeah, I have virtual stuff, and I also have like a podcast that's based on yoga meditation. So like on the podcast, there's free meditations. So there's a lot of ways they can get like some free videos and audio stuff from me.
Great deal. I mean, all right. So anything else you want to say or promote or?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, hey, that works for me.
Man, I appreciate you doing this, man. This was fun. This was
great. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, this was fun. Okay. I appreciate your time. Very grateful.
We're out of here, folks. See ya. Be good to yourselves and all that good stuff. Bye. She walks